My trusted roommate of 2 years used my personal information to open credit cards and take out loans in my name. When I discovered what she'd done, she vanished without a trace, leaving me with $80,000 in debt and a destroyed future. My name is Maya, and I'm 24F. I'm writing this because I honestly don't know what else to do. My life has been completely destroyed by someone I trusted more than my own family, and I'm scared I'll never recover from what she's done to me. 2 years ago, I was fresh out of college and had just landed my first real job as a marketing coordinator in Chicago. I was making decent money, but not enough to afford living alone in the city, so I started looking for a roommate. That's when I met Chelsea, 26F, through a mutual friend from work. She seemed perfect. She was older, more mature, had been working in finance for several years, and seemed really responsible with money. She even offered to handle all the utility bills and rent payments, since she said she was better at managing finances. Chelsea was charming, funny, and incredibly organized. She had this way of making everyone feel like they were the most important person in the room. When we looked at apartments together, landlords loved her immediately. She always knew exactly what to say and had all her paperwork perfectly organized. We found a beautiful 2-bedroom apartment in Lincoln Park that was honestly a bit out of our price range, but Chelsea convinced me we could make it work. She said she had been saving money for years and could cover the security deposit if I paid her back gradually. Living with Chelsea was amazing at first. She cooked incredible meals, kept the apartment spotless, and always seemed to have money for fun activities. She'd suggest expensive dinners or weekend trips, and when I'd worry about the cost, she'd wave it off and say life was too short to worry about money. I should have been suspicious about how she always seemed to have extra cash despite claiming we made similar salaries. But I was young and naive, and I trusted her completely. Chelsea had this way of making me feel like she was looking out for me, like an older sister. About 6 months into living together, Chelsea suggested we should build our credit together. She said since we were both young professionals, having excellent credit would be important for buying cars, getting better apartments, maybe even houses someday. Chelsea offered to help me apply for credit cards since she said she understood the financial system better than I did. She explained that if we applied for cards at the same time and used each other as references, we'd both be more likely to get approved for higher limits. I gave Chelsea copies of my driver's license, social security card, and recent pay stubs so she could help me with the applications. She said it would be easier if she handled all the paperwork since she had experience with this kind of thing from her job in finance. Within a few weeks, I started receiving credit cards in the mail. Chelsea would collect the mail most days since she got home before me, and she'd hand me the cards with a smile, congratulating me on building my credit. She suggested I give her the cards to keep in her file system so they wouldn't get lost or damaged. Chelsea explained that she would use the cards occasionally for shared expenses like groceries or utilities, then pay them off immediately to build both our credit histories. She showed me charts and graphs about how this strategy would improve our credit scores faster than using the cards individually. I was impressed by how knowledgeable Chelsea seemed about financial strategy. She'd show me articles about credit building and explain complex financial concepts in ways that made sense. I felt lucky to have such a financially savvy roommate helping me navigate adulthood. Over the next year, our living situation continued to be great. Chelsea and I had become close friends, going out together, sharing meals, and even taking a vacation to Miami together. She always seemed to have money for everything, and she was generous about paying for things when I was short on cash. Occasionally, I'd ask about the credit cards and whether I needed to make payments, but Chelsea always assured me everything was being handled perfectly. She'd show me her spreadsheets tracking our expenses and payments, proving that our credit building strategy was working exactly as planned. I trusted Chelsea so completely that I never thought to check my credit report independently. She had convinced me that checking too often could actually hurt my score, so I left everything in her capable hands. The first sign something was wrong came about 3 months ago. I received a call from a debt collection agency demanding payment on a credit card I'd never heard of. When I explained there must be some mistake, the collector read off my name, address, and social security number. I immediately called Chelsea, who seemed just as confused as I was. She suggested it might be identity theft and helped me file a report with the credit bureaus. She was so supportive and helpful during the whole process that it never occurred to me she might be involved. But then more calls started coming. Different collection agencies, all claiming I owed money on various accounts. Each time, Chelsea would help me dispute the charges and file reports. She even offered to contact the companies directly since she said her experience in finance might help resolve things faster. 2 weeks ago, I decided to pull my full credit report to see exactly what was happening. What I found destroyed my world completely. There were 17 different credit cards opened in my name over the past 18 months, all with balances totaling over $65,000. There were also 3 personal loans totaling another $15,000, all taken out using my information but addresses I'd never lived at. Every single account was in default, and my credit score had plummeted to 485. When I confronted Chelsea with the credit report, her reaction told me everything I needed to know. Instead of shock or outrage, she got defensive immediately. She started making excuses about how complicated credit building could be and how these might be errors in the system. But as I pressed harder, asking specific questions about accounts and addresses, Chelsea's story kept changing. First, she claimed hackers must have gotten my information. Then she suggested maybe the credit bureaus had mixed up our files since we lived at the same address. Finally, when I threatened to call the police, Chelsea broke down and admitted everything. She confessed that she had been opening credit credit cards and taking out loans in my name for over a year. She said she had gotten into financial trouble before we moved in together and had been using my credit to stay afloat. Chelsea claimed she had always planned to pay everything back before I found out. She said her plan was to get a promotion at work and use the extra money to pay off all the debt, then tell me it had all been part of a sophisticated credit-building strategy. She begged me not to report her to the police, claiming it would destroy her career and her life. Chelsea promised she would find a way to pay back every penny, but she needed time to figure out how. She said if I reported her, I'd never see any of the money back because she'd end up in prison. I was devastated, angry, and completely overwhelmed. This person I had trusted with my most personal information had systematically destroyed my financial future. The Chelsea I thought I knew had never really existed. She was a complete fraud who had manipulated me from day one. I gave Chelsea 48 hours to come up with a concrete plan to fix what she had done. She promised she would contact all the creditors and work out payment arrangements. She said she would take out a loan against her 401k and sell her car to start paying down the debt immediately. But when I came home from work yesterday, Chelsea was gone. She had packed up all her belongings and disappeared without leaving so much as a note. Her phone goes straight to voicemail, and she's blocked me on all social media. It's like she never existed. I'm now facing $80,000 in debt that I never authorized, a destroyed credit score, and collection agencies calling me constantly. I've filed police reports and contacted a lawyer, but everyone says cases like this are incredibly difficult to prosecute and even harder to recover money from. The worst part is that all of this debt is legally mine according to the credit card companies and loan providers. Even though I never applied for these accounts or received any of the money, proving fraud is complex and time-consuming. In the meantime, the debt continues to accrue interest and late fees. I'm 24 years old and my financial life is completely ruined before it even began. I can't qualify for an apartment lease, a car loan, or even a cell phone contract. I've had to move back in with my parents, and I'm working with a nonprofit credit counseling service to try to figure out next steps. Chelsea had access to everything: my social security number, my mother's maiden name, my banking information, even my childhood address from when we filled out rental applications together. She knew enough about my life to answer any security questions creditors might ask. I keep wondering how I could have been so stupid and trusting. The signs were there, but I was so impressed by Chelsea's financial knowledge and grateful for her help that I never questioned anything. She was a master manipulator who targeted me specifically because I was young and inexperienced. The police detective assigned to my case says Chelsea probably targeted multiple victims and might not even be using her real name. Identity theft rings often work this way, building relationships with victims over months or years before disappearing with their financial lives destroyed. I'm sharing this story because I want to warn other young people to be incredibly careful about who they trust with personal information. Even people who seem helpful and knowledgeable can have hidden motives. Never let anyone else handle your financial accounts, no matter how much you trust them. Right now, I'm working on disputing every fraudulent account and trying to rebuild my credit from scratch. It's a process that could take years, and there's no guarantee I'll be successful. Chelsea has disappeared completely, and I may never get any of this money back. Has anyone dealt with something similar? I'm looking for advice on how to navigate this nightmare and rebuild my life. I feel so alone and overwhelmed by the complexity of everything I need to do to fix this mess. Update 1. It's been 6 weeks since I discovered what Chelsea had done to me, and I wanted to update everyone on the progress I've made in trying to fix this nightmare. Unfortunately, things have gotten much more complicated than I initially realized. First, thank you to everyone who responded to my original post with advice and support. Reading your comments helped me understand that I wasn't alone in this situation, and that there were concrete steps I could take to fight back. After Chelsea disappeared, I immediately froze my credit with all 3 bureaus and filed detailed police reports in both Chicago and my hometown. I also contacted the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center, since identity theft crosses state lines and might involve organized crime. The detective handling my case, Officer Rodriguez, has been incredibly helpful but also realistic about my chances of recovering any money. He explained that cases like mine are unfortunately common, and perpetrators like Chelsea often disappear completely once they're discovered. Officer Rodriguez ran Chelsea's information through various databases and discovered some disturbing facts. The name she had been using, Chelsea Morrison, was actually stolen from a woman in Oregon who died in a car accident 3 years ago. The real Chelsea Morrison's identity had been used to establish credit, get jobs, and rent apartments across multiple states. This means the person who lived with me for 2 years was using a completely false identity. I don't even know her real name. Officer Rodriguez said this level of identity theft indicates she was likely part of a larger criminal organization that specializes in long-term financial fraud. The FBI agent who contacted me, Agent Chen, explained that my case fits the pattern of what they call lifestyle identity theft. Instead of quickly draining accounts and disappearing, criminals like fake Chelsea embed themselves in victims' lives for months or years, slowly building debt while maintaining the victim's trust. Agent Chen said they're investigating a network of similar cases across the Midwest. All the perpetrators used stolen identities, targeted young professionals, and disappeared after accumulating massive debts in their victims' names. They believe it's an organized operation that trains criminals to be long-term imposters. While law enforcement investigates, I've been working with a forensic accountant recommended by my lawyer to trace exactly what fake fake Chelsea did with the money she stole. The investigation has revealed the true scope of her deception, and it's even worse than I initially thought. The forensic accountant discovered that fake Chelsea had been opening accounts in my name starting just 3 weeks after we moved in together. She hadn't waited months to begin her fraud. She had been planning this from the moment she met me, possibly even before. In total, she opened 23 different accounts using my information. This includes not just credit cards and personal loans, but also store credit accounts, online lending platforms, and even a business loan for a company that never existed. The total debt is actually closer to $95,000, not the $80,000 I initially calculated. Even more disturbing, the forensic accountant found evidence that fake Chelsea had been running similar schemes with at least 3 other roommates over the past 5 years. She would live with victims for 18 to 24 months, systematically destroy their credit, then disappear and move on to the next target. The money trail shows that fake Chelsea used the stolen funds to maintain an expensive lifestyle that was completely separate from our shared apartment. She had been renting a luxury condo downtown, driving a BMW, and taking expensive vacations, all funded by debt taken out in her victims' names. Meanwhile, she had been splitting utilities and rent with me while portraying herself as financially responsible but not wealthy. The whole humble, hard-working persona had been an act designed to make me trust her with my personal information. I've been working with a non-profit legal aid organization that specializes in identity theft cases. My attorney, Sarah Kim, has been incredibly helpful in explaining the dispute process and setting realistic expectations about recovery. Attorney Kim filed comprehensive disputes with every creditor, providing evidence that the accounts were opened fraudulently. This includes police reports, affidavits from me, and documentation showing that I never received any of the money or merchandise purchased with the stolen credit. The process is incredibly slow and frustrating. Each creditor has its own investigation process, and many are initially skeptical of fraud claims. Some have closed accounts and removed them from my credit report, but others are demanding additional documentation or refusing to acknowledge the fraud at all. The worst part is dealing with debt collectors who don't care about the fraud claims. Even though I've provided evidence that the debt isn't mine, some collection agencies continue calling and threatening legal action. A few have even suggested that I must have been involved in the scheme somehow. My credit score has actually gotten worse since I started disputing the accounts, dropping to 412. Attorney Kim explained that this is normal during the dispute process, but it's still devastating to see the number get lower when I'm trying to rebuild my life. The financial impact extends far beyond just the debt itself. I've had to take time off work for court appearances, meetings with investigators, and dispute processes. My productivity at my job has suffered because I'm constantly stressed and distracted by phone calls from creditors. I've also had to spend money I didn't have on legal fees, credit monitoring services, and certified mail for dispute letters. Even though I'm living with my parents rent-free, the costs of fighting this fraud are significant for someone my age. The emotional toll has been even harder than the financial impact. I've been seeing a therapist to deal with the trauma of being so thoroughly deceived and manipulated. Learning that someone I trusted completely had been systematically destroying my life for 2 years has affected my ability to trust anyone. I've also been struggling with shame and self-blame, wondering how I could have been so naive. My therapist has helped me understand that fake Chelsea was a skilled con artist who specifically targeted young people like me because we're more trusting and less experienced with financial systems. On a more positive note, I've connected with other victims of similar schemes through online support groups. Hearing their stories has helped me realize that intelligent, careful people can still fall victim to sophisticated fraud. It's not about being stupid or careless. One victim, Janet, shared a strategy that's been helpful for staying organized during the dispute process. She created a spreadsheet tracking every fraudulent account, including creditor contact information, dispute dates, and resolution status. Having everything documented in one place has made the process less overwhelming. Another victim, Marcus, recommended recording all phone calls with creditors and debt collectors. Many states allow single-party consent recording, and having audio evidence of conversations has helped several victims prove that they properly disputed fraudulent debts. I've also learned about state and federal resources I didn't know existed. The Federal Trade Commission has detailed guides for identity theft victims, and many states have victim compensation programs that can help cover some of the costs associated with fighting fraud. My parents have been incredibly supportive throughout this process, but I can see the stress it's putting on our family. They're worried about my future and frustrated that there's so little they can do to help. My dad has even talked about taking out a loan to pay off some of the debt, but I can't let him destroy his retirement for my sake. The investigation is ongoing, and Agent Chen has cautioned that it could take months or even years to track down fake Chelsea and her associates. Even if they're caught and prosecuted, recovering the stolen money is unlikely since most of it has probably been spent or moved offshore. For now, I'm focusing on the things I can control. I'm continuing to dispute every fraudulent account, working with my therapist, and trying to maintain my job performance despite everything that's happening. I'm also documenting everything meticulously in case it becomes relevant to the criminal investigation. I'll update again when there are significant developments in the case or the dispute process. Thank you again to everyone who has offered advice and support. Knowing that people care has helped me get through some very dark days. Update 2. It's been 4 months since fake Chelsea disappeared. disappeared, and I have some major updates to share. The situation has taken several unexpected turns, and while some progress has been made, new complications have emerged that I never saw coming. The biggest development is that law enforcement has made significant progress in their investigation. 3 weeks ago, Agent Chen called to tell me that they had identified fake Chelsea's real identity and arrested her along with 6 other members of what they're calling the Midwest Identity Ring. Her real name is Jennifer Walsh, and she's a 34-year-old career criminal with a history of identity theft dating back over a decade. The FBI discovered that she had been using the deceased Chelsea Morrison's identity for nearly 4 years, during which time she defrauded at least 12 different victims across 7 states. Jennifer and her associates had developed a sophisticated system for targeting young professionals. They would identify potential victims through social media and mutual connections, then spend weeks or months researching their backgrounds before making contact. The whole operation was much more organized than I had imagined. The arrest happened when Jennifer tried to pull the same scheme on a victim in Minneapolis. However, this victim worked for a bank and recognized the fraud patterns quickly. She contacted authorities immediately, and they were able to track Jennifer down before she could disappear again. When they arrested Jennifer, they found detailed files on dozens of victims, including a folder with my name containing copies of my personal documents, credit reports, and even photographs taken secretly in our apartment. Seeing evidence of how thoroughly she had violated my privacy was devastating, but also validating. Jennifer had been living under multiple identities simultaneously, maintaining separate apartments, vehicles, and even relationships in different cities. The life I thought we shared was just one small piece of an elaborate criminal enterprise she had been running for years. Unfortunately, recovering any of the stolen money remains unlikely. The FBI's financial investigation revealed that Jennifer and her associates had been funneling stolen funds through cryptocurrency exchanges and offshore accounts. Most of the $95,000 taken in my name has been converted to untraceable digital assets or moved internationally. However, there has been significant progress on the credit dispute front. Jennifer's arrest provided the concrete evidence many creditors needed to acknowledge the fraud. Having police reports and FBI documentation has made the dispute process much more straightforward. Over the past month, I've successfully had 14 fraudulent accounts removed from my credit report. My credit score has jumped from 412 to 623, which is still not good but represents massive improvement. My attorney believes we can get most of the remaining accounts resolved within the next few months. The process isn't over yet, but I'm finally seeing light at the end of the tunnel. Some creditors have not only removed the fraudulent debt, but have also provided documentation stating that I was a victim of identity theft, which helps with future credit applications. However, a new complication has emerged that I didn't expect. Last month, I received a call from a woman named Rachel who claimed to be Jennifer's previous victim from 2 years ago. She had seen news coverage of the arrest and reached out because she recognized Jennifer's photo. Rachel told me that Jennifer had lived with her for 18 months under a different fake name and had destroyed her credit in a similar way. But Rachel's story took a darker turn that made me realize how lucky I might have been. According to Rachel, after she discovered the fraud and confronted Jennifer, Jennifer didn't just disappear. Instead, she escalated the situation by filing false police reports claiming that Rachel had threatened her and was stalking her. Jennifer even obtained a restraining order against Rachel based on fabricated evidence. Rachel spent months fighting false criminal charges while simultaneously trying to dispute the fraudulent debt. The stress destroyed her marriage, caused her to lose her job, and led to a nervous breakdown that required hospitalization. Jennifer had weaponized the legal system to further victimize someone who was already suffering from her fraud. Learning about Rachel's experience made me realize that Jennifer's sudden disappearance when I confronted her might have been unusual. Rachel believes that Jennifer was probably planning to escalate against me too, but was forced to flee quickly because the FBI investigation was closing in. Rachel and I have become allies in supporting each other through the recovery process. She's further along in rebuilding her credit and has shared strategies that have been incredibly helpful. Having someone who truly understands what I've been through has been emotionally invaluable. Through Rachel, I've also connected with several other victims from Jennifer's network. We've discovered that Jennifer and her associates had been sharing information about their victims, cross-referencing targets, and even selling successful fraud patterns to other criminal groups. This revelation led to another shocking discovery. 2 months ago, I received a letter from a law firm representing creditors in a bankruptcy case. Apparently, someone had filed for bankruptcy in my name in Nevada, listing me as residing at an address I'd never heard of. The bankruptcy filing was another layer of Jennifer's fraud that I hadn't known about. She had been using my identity not just to accumulate debt, but also to file fraudulent bankruptcy papers to discharge debts taken out in other victims' names. The complexity of her scheme was staggering. Fighting the fraudulent bankruptcy has required hiring additional legal representation and appearing in federal court in Nevada. The whole process has been expensive and time-consuming, but my attorney says it's essential to prevent future complications. Meanwhile, the criminal case against Jennifer has been moving forward. She's been charged with multiple federal crimes, including wire fraud, mail fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. The prosecutor's office has told me that if convicted on all charges, she could face up to 30 years in prison. I've been asked to testify at Jennifer's trial, which is scheduled for early next year. The prosecutor says my testimony will be crucial in establishing the pattern of fraud and the impact on victims. victims. Part of me is terrified to face Jennifer again, but another part wants her to see the damage she caused. The financial impact of this experience extends beyond just the fraudulent debt. I've spent over $8,000 on legal fees, travel costs for court appearances, credit monitoring services, and other expenses related to fighting the fraud. My parents helped with some of these costs, but I've had to take on additional debt just to afford the process of clearing my name. I've also missed significant time at work for legal proceedings and dispute meetings. While my employer has been understanding, I know my career progression has been affected. Several colleagues have been promoted while I've been dealing with this crisis, and I've had to turn down opportunities that required travel or relocation. The emotional recovery has been just as challenging as the financial aspects. I've continued therapy and have made progress in rebuilding my ability to trust people, but the experience has fundamentally changed how I interact with others. I'm much more cautious and skeptical, which isn't always healthy but feels necessary for protection. Dating has been particularly difficult. How do you explain to someone new that you can't qualify for a lease or a car loan because your roommate stole your identity? Even though the fraud wasn't my fault, there's still stigma attached to financial problems that affects how people perceive me. On a positive note, I've become involved with advocacy groups working to strengthen identity theft protections and support victims. Sharing my story at educational events has been therapeutic and has helped prevent others from experiencing similar fraud. The experience has also taught me valuable lessons about financial literacy and protection that I wish I had learned earlier. I now understand credit systems, fraud prevention, and legal protections in ways that will serve me well for the rest of my life, even though I learned them under terrible circumstances. Looking ahead, I'm cautiously optimistic about my recovery. While the financial and emotional damage has been severe, I can see a path forward. With Jennifer in custody and most fraudulent accounts being resolved, I'm finally beginning to rebuild my life rather than just defending it. The trial is still months away, and there will likely be more complications and setbacks. But for the first time since this nightmare began, I feel like I have some control over my future. Jennifer destroyed 2 years of my life, but she won't get to destroy the rest of it. Update 3. It's been almost a year since I first discovered Jennifer's fraud, and I'm writing this final update from my new apartment. After months of legal battles, credit disputes, and emotional recovery, I can finally say that I'm rebuilding my life successfully. The criminal trial concluded 3 months ago, with Jennifer being convicted on all charges. She received a sentence of 25 years in federal prison and was ordered to pay $2.3 million in restitution to her various victims. While I'll likely never see most of the money she stole from me, knowing that she can't hurt anyone else provides some closure. Testifying at her trial was one of the most difficult things I've ever done, but also one of the most empowering. Jennifer showed no remorse throughout the proceedings, maintaining that her victims were willing participants who should have known better. Her complete lack of accountability confirmed that I made the right choice in pursuing prosecution rather than trying to resolve things privately. The judge's comments during sentencing were particularly validating. He stated that Jennifer had shown predatory behavior toward vulnerable young adults and had caused immeasurable harm to victims' financial futures and psychological well-being. Hearing a federal judge acknowledge the real impact of her crimes helped counter the self-blame I had been struggling with. My credit recovery has been more successful than anyone initially predicted. With Jennifer's conviction providing definitive proof of fraud, I was able to resolve all but 3 of the fraudulent accounts. My credit score is now 698, which is considered good and continues to improve each month. The remaining 3 accounts are being handled through ongoing litigation. 2 creditors have agreed to settlements that will clear the debt without affecting my credit, while the third is being pursued through a class action lawsuit involving multiple victims from Jennifer's scheme. Having functional credit again has been life-changing. I was able to qualify for my own apartment lease, get a car loan with reasonable terms, and even obtain a new credit card with a small limit to continue rebuilding my credit history. These might seem like basic milestones, but they represent freedom I hadn't realized I'd lost. The apartment search was still challenging despite my improved credit. Many landlords were hesitant when they saw the fraud alerts on my credit report, even though the alerts actually indicate responsible credit monitoring. I ended up working with a property manager who specialized in helping identity theft victims, and she found me a perfect 1-bedroom place in a safe neighborhood. Moving into my own space has been incredibly therapeutic. After living with my parents for months and being afraid to trust potential roommates, having complete control over my living situation feels liberating. I've been slowly furnishing the apartment with pieces I actually chose, creating an environment that feels truly mine. Career-wise, the experience has had some unexpected positive outcomes. My employer was so impressed with how I handled the crisis and maintained my work performance under extreme stress that I was promoted to senior marketing coordinator with a 15% salary increase. The promotion came with additional responsibilities that I probably wouldn't have been ready for before this experience taught me resilience and problem-solving skills. I've also started doing consulting work helping other identity theft victims navigate the recovery process. Working with a nonprofit legal aid organization, I provide peer support and practical guidance based on my experience. It's rewarding work that helps me feel like something positive has come from my trauma. The financial impact of fighting the fraud was significant, but I've been able to recover some of those costs. The FBI's Victim Compensation Fund provided $3,500 $1,000 to help cover legal expenses, and my homeowner's insurance, through my parents' policy, covered some additional costs under their identity theft protection coverage. I've also received small payments from the class action settlements against some of the financial institutions that failed to properly verify Jennifer's fraudulent applications. While these amounts don't fully compensate for the costs I incurred, every bit helps with my ongoing recovery. Emotionally, I've made tremendous progress through continued therapy and the support network I've built with other victims. The isolation and shame that initially consumed me have been replaced by a sense of empowerment and purpose. I still have difficult days, but they're becoming less frequent. Trust remains a challenge, particularly in personal relationships. I've started dating again, but I'm much more cautious about sharing personal information and allowing people into my life. My therapist says this increased wariness is actually healthy given what I experienced, as long as it doesn't prevent me from forming meaningful connections. I've developed new habits around financial security that will serve me well for life. I check my credit reports monthly, have fraud alerts on all my accounts, and maintain detailed records of all financial transactions. I also never share personal documents or information with anyone, no matter how much I trust them. The experience has also changed my perspective on financial independence and security. I'm now much more focused on building emergency savings and understanding all aspects of my financial life. I've taken courses in personal finance and credit management that I wish I'd known about when I was younger. One unexpected positive outcome has been the relationships I've formed with other victims. Rachel and I have become close friends, and we've created an informal support network for identity theft survivors. We regularly check in with each other and celebrate milestones in our recovery processes. Through this network, I've learned that recovery from identity theft isn't just about fixing credit scores and clearing debt. It's about rebuilding confidence, learning to trust your instincts, and creating systems to protect yourself while still being able to engage fully with life. Looking back, I can see how this experience has fundamentally changed me for the better in some ways. I'm more independent, more knowledgeable about financial systems, more resilient in the face of adversity, and more compassionate toward others facing difficult situations. Jennifer intended to destroy my life, but instead she forced me to develop strengths I didn't know I had. The legal case isn't completely over. There are still civil proceedings pending against some of the institutions that failed to prevent the fraud, and the FBI continues investigating the broader criminal network. But my active involvement in these cases is minimal now, allowing me to focus on moving forward rather than looking backward. For anyone dealing with identity theft or financial fraud, my advice is to act quickly, document everything, and don't try to handle it alone. Get professional help from attorneys and advocates who specialize in these cases. The system is complex and intimidating, but there are resources and people who can help you navigate it. Most importantly, don't blame yourself. Sophisticated criminals like Jennifer are skilled manipulators who deliberately target trusting people. Being victimized by fraud doesn't reflect any personal failing or weakness. It reflects the criminal behavior of people who choose to harm others for personal gain. I'm sharing this final update not just to close out my story, but to offer hope to others who might be in the early stages of similar situations. Recovery is possible, even when the damage seems overwhelming. It takes time, effort, and support, but you can rebuild and create a life that's even stronger than what was taken from you. Jennifer stole 2 years of my life and caused tremendous pain, but she didn't get to define my future. I did that myself, with the help of family, friends, professionals, and fellow survivors who showed me what recovery could look like. Today, I'm not just surviving the aftermath of her fraud, I'm thriving despite it.